Hey, I'm Michael, and this is Michael in the Middle. It's an intergenerational relational podcast for people who are interested in better human interaction. I'm glad you're here. I don't know if you're into numerology, Allison, but you're number 20 in terms of the number of episodes that I've recorded here on Michael in the Middle.
I don't know what that means.
Do you remember when you were 20 years old?
Yes, absolutely.
Where were you when you were 20 years old?
I was at the University of Kentucky trying to be a horticulturalist.
Wow. Well, I guess you were destined to live on a farm, at some point, right?
I thought that was my path in life. My mother always said, "You need to go to college to have something to fall back on." I realized how bad I was at chemistry and biology, so thank God he had a different plan.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, I am so thrilled that you're here with me as we dive into what I'm certain is going to be just a wonderful conversation. Um, I've admired your music before I really got to know you. I knew your husband and a little earlier in the progression of things because we actually graduated from Trevecca together back in 1982.
Great. Yeah.
But no, this is Allison Speer, and one of gospel music's truly great voices across the years. I mean, I'm not just saying that because I appreciate you so much as a friend, but I'm not the only one who thinks that. God gave you a beautiful voice, and boy, it's just so good to have you here, and I'm excited about this conversation that we're going to be able to have, and just welcome. It's good to see you today.
Thank you. I just have one question for you before we get started.
Yeah.
This is such a great idea for an episode, a podcast. When did your wife come up with this idea?
Sarah is the most
behind every great man is a brilliant woman.
Yeah, well, she truly is. The thing about Sarah that is way beyond what I could have ever expected in terms of a life partner is that she puts up with me in ways I'm sure that other people would not have. And she's been in the middle of helping me be a better person since the first time I met her. I watched her walk into the room at the old College Hill Church at Trevecca Nazarene University. I may have mentioned this on another episode somewhere along the way, but I watched her walk in the room. I was sitting with my brother and my mom and dad at Trevecca Orientation, and her parents were kind of Trevecca royalty in a lot of ways. And they walked in and they walked straight down front. We were seated at the back, but as I watched her walk past, she just looked like, she was 18 years old, but she looked like a much more mature person than I was at the moment. And she's walking past, and I punched my brother in the ribs, and I said, "I will meet her before the day is over." So cocky. And I did meet her before the day was over, but I also met my match. She was everything that I needed even before I knew it, and we've had a great time together. So and she really loves you. She was glad when I told her that we were going to be able to do this today. And so anyway, we'll try to get together more often with you and Brian than we've been able to in some respects. It seems like we're always running into each other when we're working, and one of these days we're going to sit down and have a nice long meal together somewhere.
Yes.
So anyway, the Michael in the Middle thing, it's just been something that I've been thinking about for a long time, and it's come to fruition. And I mean, we're now at episode number 20, and I can't think of a better person to have than yourself there. And I'm anxious to hear things about your story that I've not heard yet, because I believe it's going to be a blessing to the people that are able to tune into this. So tell me tell me where you came from. Tell me about your early years.
Well, I'm from Parksville, Kentucky, which is a little town outside of Danville, Kentucky. Danville is the geographic center of the state, so I'm in bluegrass country,
Nice.
and my people are all farmers, and that's how they made their living, is farming, and they did extra things. My dad was a construction worker as well, but everybody worked the farm, including us kids. So I'm not from singing people. I married into singing people. I'm not from musical people. We didn't sit around on the porch and play instruments and do bluegrass music or anything like that. As a matter of fact, I don't remember much music outside of church.
Yeah.
But I fell in love with gospel music, with Christian music, because of the radio station that came out of Lexington. And it just filled my soul with great, and it was contemporary music back then. It wasn't
Yeah.
Southern gospel.
Sure.
Um,
How old were you when you knew you could sing?
oh, mercy. I'm 57, probably 56 and a half, maybe.
No. I mean, do you remember a moment when you when you got up and sang in front of people and they responded?
No, I don't. Um, I have a I've had a wonderful ability to not know that, but it's also a blessing and a curse. I see people respond, but I use the response not to figure out what's going on, but what they want to hear next.
Okay. All right.
I've never allowed that to be an indicator, which I don't know. I think it is a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
So, and I've always considered every performance, and Brian can tell you this, every performance I do, I consider what could be better and not how good I did. So, not how they responded. So,
I
it's
think
interesting.
I think that's just human nature for anybody that's in a performing occupation. Athletes do the same thing.
Oh, they did good. Okay, so
Oh
it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
weird.
I mean, I mean, I think producers do it. I think whatever. I know preachers do it. And
They do.
yeah. I mean,
Oh, okay.
I I think something about who we are as humans perhaps is is always thinking, how have people responded to that, and maybe what could I have done differently that would have brought about an even greater response. I mean,
Yeah.
and for you to say that, I guess makes total sense, because usually you're walking off to standing ovations and that kind of thing, and there you are thinking, well, I do remember a note I missed, and or something like
Several.
that. Yeah. Um, but I think there's something, good in that as well, in that you want to be at your best. I'm sure. What what kinds of things led you to maybe begin to think about doing this for your life's work? I mean, you're at the University of Kentucky and you're studying horticulture. What what switched? What flipped for you?
I went to the University of Kentucky. I studied horticulture, and I did okay, but I was not happy. There was nothing in me that enjoyed the studies that I was doing. Um, and I started, after I came home that first year from UK, I got a job at a grocery store and at a bank. I worked at the bank during the day and a grocery store at night. And I got a call one day from a fella up in Cincinnati who had somehow heard me sing somewhere. And he wanted me to come and do a few songs while Squire Parsons took an intermission.
Wow.
And I drove all the way to Cincinnati. My car broke down on the way. It was something to do with the muffler and catalytic converter and all that mess. And they got me on the road. And when I got to the church, I said, I have no way back home because this vehicle is not going to get me there. And they took my car and let me stay with a church member, and they took my car and fixed it while I was there. But I sang 2 songs while Squire was taking an intermission, and as far as I knew, Squire was out in the green room or the hallway or whatever. He was in the sanctuary listening to me sing, and he was very complimentary after the concert, and I just thought, okay, well, this is great. You know, they'll give me $300 or $400 to get back home, and my car's fixed. And I was at the bank working in the bookkeeping department this next week, and I got a call in the department from a man who said, I want you to come to Boone, North Carolina and meet me. And I said, no way, I don't have who you are. Yeah. He said, no, bring your mom and dad. I said, no, my mom and dad work. That's not going to happen. Well, you have a grandmother? Yes, I have a grandmother, but I'm not coming to Boone, North Carolina to meet you. And he said, I am Squire Parsons' manager, and I'm also Maurice Templeton, who is the travel agent for all the Christian cruises. And he said, I have heard that you are extraordinary, and I want to put you on my cruises. Will you come? I talked to my grandmother about it, and my grandmother and mother piled in the car, and we drove to North Carolina and met Maurice Templeton, and he put me on all of his Christian cruises, which was back then probably 25 cruises a year with all of the preachers and singers, and he became my booking agent. Okay. And Maurice did something that calmed every fear. And he was good for doing this because he did it for many people. He said to me, what would it take for you to go full time in music? And I said, well, I can't do that. I make $150 a week at my job at the bank, and the extra 75 I get from working at the grocery store is paying all my bills. And I lived at home at that time. He said, if I promise you that you can make $200 a week, and I'll assure you that you'll make $200 a week or more, will you quit your jobs and go full time? And that's a no-brainer, even for a country girl. I said, yeah, sure. And I look back on that, $200 a week was nothing, and it wasn't even that much. And I know for a fact that man he would call up churches that he knew pastors and ministers of music at, and he would say, Allison is coming. I'm sending you a check for her honorarium. I know he did that. And I know he did that a few times. Yeah. So he stepped in and he saw a minister's heart, I think, instead of just a singer. Right. And he stepped in and made a way for me. And honestly, I don't know that I would have ever gone full time into gospel music had he not done something like that.
That's amazing.
And what a small thing on his part, but a huge thing for me. A huge thing.
I think stories like that prove that we all have the capacity to do things that will help us, but if we do it in the right way, we can actually change the trajectory of someone else's life. We'll benefit from it, but
That's right.
that was transformational for you.
Transformational, yeah.
Do you
And
remember?
now it's my turn to do that for somebody else.
I love it.
You know, we're supposed to make mini-me's,
Yeah.
supposed to make disciples, and part of disciple making is to set people up in ministry and encourage them in ministry, guide them and lead them in ministry. And I've got a young minister of music right now that I'm trying to guide him in the way of creating himself a career in music. So
Fantastic.
Brian and I are doing that, and that's the joy. I mean, that's the most fun I've ever had,
Love it.
is helping
Love it.
somebody else. So
That's so cool. You're you're on cruise ships and you're singing and you're getting $200 a week, and I assume a room and food on the boat, you know, and all of that. What was next in that progression of things? I mean, where did you end up meeting Brian in that process?
on one of those cruise ships was the president of a record label
Okay.
called Homeland Records in Nashville, Tennessee. And Homeland was the label for lots and lots, the Cathedrals, the Speer Family, lots and lots of great Southern gospel people.
Yeah.
And I remember the night so clearly. Eldridge Fox of the Kingsmen
Okay.
introduced me and said, we're going to let this young gal sing a song on our set, because I usually would sing at the Bible study portion in the morning.
Okay.
And Eldridge says, I want her to sing tonight. And he introduced me and let me sing one song. And the Kingsmen's producer was in the audience. And as soon as I finished that one song, he asked me if I would step out in the hallway and talk to him a minute. And as soon as I did, he said, I want you on my label.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know it at that time, but Brian Speer was the controller of the label. So in a month or so, I traveled to Nashville, Tennessee from Kentucky, and walked in and met all of the people at the record company. And Brian was the one who said, no, don't sign her. She's young. She's not married. She's going to get married. Then she'll start having kids. She'll get off the road and won't sing anymore, and you will have wasted all of your money. So he made it his charge in life to not sign me as an artist.
Yeah.
But the record label did. And then a lady at the label pushed me in his office one day and said, he's single and you're single. He just bought a condo and he's got a new car. Get in there in court. She closed the door behind me. And I sat there looking at him like, I'm so sorry this is happening. But we spent a little bit of time together just out of necessity.
Yeah.
He was the liaison for me for getting my record made. And in spending that time with him, I realized this guy's a great guy.
Yeah.
I really like him.
Yeah.
And then I met his parents, and I honestly was not aware of Southern gospel as much as I was contemporary Christian music. Sure. Because I had no exposure to it. So when I met Brock and Faye, I met them without any preconceived notion of who they were.
Yeah.
And later on, I realized, oh mercy, these people are gospel music royalty. They're Christianity royalty to me. But that first night, I remember they sat around the table for 2 hours after dinner and just talked.
Yeah.
And it was peaceful and pleasant, and I fell in love with them too. So it was kind of a blessing, and it was a life path that the Lord blessed me with, and it's been a joy, an utter joy to be a part of that family.
Well, the Spears, I mean, they are legends in the gospel music world, but they were great people too.
Great.
I mean, characters. I mean, they were all kind of their own person in a lot of ways. But boy, when they got together and they started making music, it was magical. I've loved over the years being able to hear stories, about how songs came to being. Um, I'm I didn't know I was going to get here, but I'm drinking a cup of coffee. My mom was a Starbucks fiend. I mean, my mom loved you like you were her own. By the way, I think you probably know that. But
I loved her. She was a wonderful lady.
the my mom went through a very difficult breast cancer journey back, early. Well, the surgery was in early 1984, and somewhere along in there, somewhere in that progression, Faye sang a song that the Spears had called "Scars Are a Sign of Healing," and the different ways in which that song has ministered to different people over the years. And I'm thinking about Brock and Faye and what wonderful people they were, and how Brian and his siblings, tended to them, and all of that. And I mean, one of my favorite memories of all time at Trevecca was the day that at graduation where Faye got that honorary doctorate, and by that time her body was, pretty challenged and all that. But what an amazing moment that was. And so yeah, you married into this amazing family that was so well established in the gospel music business, but God worked through a lot of different people that you've already mentioned, and I'm sure others, to help you forge a path for yourself. And how many different records have you recorded?
I've recorded 16 records and a comedy DVD.
Yeah.
I'm in the process of doing a new record that I of songs that I want to sing. All my life, I've been taught by people like Bill and Gloria Gaither that you can sing the songs you want to sing any time of the day or night, but when you get on stage, make your program for the audience. And, and I've tried to do that. I've tried to be very aware
Sure.
of that. And at this point, I want to sing a few songs like Wayfaring Stranger, and
Yeah.
I may even do One Day at a Time. I don't know. People
Oh, that's awesome.
feelings about that song. I guess it was so very popular at one time. They got a little weary of hearing it, but it is a wonderful song. And what I'm finding is, especially when I sing Wayfaring Stranger, I'm not the only one who loved those songs.
Oh man, yeah.
So that's going to be fun. But I've never been one to record every single year.
Yeah.
I know a lot of artists do, but I don't do that. It's incredibly expensive for an independent artist, which I've been for 18 years.
Wow.
I like being an independent artist. There are pros and cons, of course, but I realized that when I would gain popularity with the record industry, the music industry, and radio, my popularity would kind of dwindle with the church.
Mm.
And when I would work, toward making music for the church, my popularity would kind of dwindle with the music industry. And that was kind of an easy choice for me too, because I really have always felt like I am a minister before an entertainer, and I like to entertain. I like to see people have a great time. But I really like to minister as well. And there are lots of hurting people, and I think they all come to my concerts. So when you minister the words of life, that's what they take away, and they can live another week or two with
I'm
the pro.
gonna tell you that I mean, we've been with you all several different times, and it's easy to be enthralled with the incredible range that you have, both vocally and stylistically. I mean, I genuinely think you're an amazing singer, and so I and Brian is there with you in the back of the room, making sure the sound is just right. And I know that he is. I mean, you talk about him being a controller. That's an accounting term, but it's also kind of a double entendre. He
It
wants things
is.
to be just right.
Exactly.
Um, you know, um, I I mean, I could name a dozen songs that have moved me greatly, but one song I wanted to talk to you about was "In the Meantime." And when, first of all, let me ask you this: when did you start writing songs for yourself to sing?
When I fell in love with gospel music, I began to write. I do not write music. I write kind of to everything to a dummy melody,
Okay.
which would be Go Tell Ain't Rhody or Jingle Bells or anything that happens to pop into my mind just so that I can find the proper meter for the song. Um, and usually I give the better lyrics to somebody that is good with melody. I I began doing that when I first married Brian in 1989. I think it was 1990 that I co-wrote my first song with the very highly decorated Joel Lindsay
Yeah.
and Niles Borup. Niles wrote Via Dolorosa,
Hmm.
and Joel wrote Orphans of God and 1,000 other that you would recognize.
Wow. Yeah.
And I started co-writing with them and started learning the process of co-writing. And that process really thrilled my creative nature because I realized in those sessions I learned as well as created. And they were wonderful teachers in the guise of co-writers.
That's
And
amazing.
they
What was
have
the first song?
it was a song called "The Toolbox" about my grandfather,
Oh man.
and it, it it was a great song to sing live because I usually sing in the South, and
Yeah.
everybody that had a granddaddy saw Granddad's toolbox. So, um, but that co-writing relationship with Joel Lindsay has continued throughout the years, and we've written many songs together, a lot of which you would not have heard because they're stuck in a publisher's computer somewhere, but some of which I have recorded myself. And Joel conducts a wonderful co-writing retreat where he asks about 15 pro writers, full-time Christian writers, to come and write with 15 or 20 part-time writers or beginning writers that he sees potential in.
Yeah.
And we put all of our names in a pillowcase and draw out 3 names, and we write and co-write. So it's kind of random. But every time I've ever written at this retreat, I've gotten to write with a pro writer who has taught me multiple lessons about songwriting. And that gives me time to learn and produce. And in the meantime, came out of one of those retreats. One of my co-writers was going through, she was a nurse, and she had made some mistakes as a nurse because of pain that she was experiencing. And she was going through very dire circumstances. She was about to lose her profession. And we sat down, and I had just lost my nephew to a bad wreck.
Mm.
And we sat down and started talking about God's favor and his wisdom and about the book of Job.
Mm.
And we wrote "In the Meantime," just to remind ourselves the things that Job went through are very similar to what we go through today, and the agony and misery, the pain, the suffering. But the book of Job has never been about suffering. The book of Job is about God's grace in the midst of suffering.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so we wanted to write God's grace in a song about suffering. And I think
Wow.
we accomplished that.
Oh, but in the meantime, you're the lifter of my head. And in the meantime, you're the giver of my bread. Lord, your goodness is too wonderful for me. I believe my Redeemer is alive, even in the meantime.
It's a beautiful song musically that matches the lyric in a sort of magical way. And sometimes I listen to a song and I think somebody tried to force a lyric into a melody they really liked, or vice versa. You know, somebody found a melody that, "Well, let's see if we can slap some words on this." You know? But in the meantime, is one of those that marries the tune and the words together in a powerful and healing sort of way.
Yes.
You know, I think sometimes Christians feel like they can't be totally honest about the challenges of life, because somehow that's not as victorious as we think it needs to be. But I think we validate the work of God in our lives when we recognize that, he's right there in the middle
That's
of whatever it is that we're dealing with, and
right.
so
That's a good point. But we validate it. Yes.
yeah,
God's grace is a wonderful thing to rejoice about. It needs an anthem. It needs a song. It needs drum beats and shouts of joy. But
mhm,
there are lots of tears also mixed into God's grace with us. So, and when we recognize that, I think we live the abundant life,
yeah.
and that's what people see us going through hardship and trial and suffering, but still having God's grace upon us.
I would just say amen. It's so cool.
Amen. Yep.
I got just something that would be kind of fun for me to know. What maybe is a favorite song or two that you've done that someone else wrote, and then I'd like to know what song you've written that maybe you enjoy singing the most. What's on that list?
Um, I really enjoy a lot of the Gaither music.
Okay.
I've always loved their song, Hear My Song, Lord.
Oh yeah,
You remember that song? It's
I
got
do.
a
Yes.
kind of a strange little beat, and it's real quiet and soft. I started with Bill and Gloria Gaither before the videos. I started with them when it was just the vocal band, and Gloria went out, and it would be a vocal band trio concert.
Okay.
Buddy Green would go, and I would go and sing a few songs, and that's kind of that was the setup. That was the Gaither concert.
Can I
And
tell you? Can I tell you a quick Buddy Green story?
oh yeah,
I don't even know if Buddy would remember this for sure, but when Bill first brought him to Nashville, when he was just getting started in Nashville, so this would have been I'm going to say it was around 1984. I spent 2 years in banking myself with Commerce Union Bank here in town, and so I was in Green Hills and Hillsborough Village branches, and I ran into people who were in the music business. And it's where I met Roger Miller and Dottie West and Rudy Gatlin and people like that. But here comes Buddy Green before anybody knew, in the business, who Buddy Green was. And I opened Buddy's first checking account when he moved to Nashville. and I play the harmonica just a little bit, and watching Buddy's life emerge after that moment was just it was just absolutely fantastic, you know. And so the fact that you and Buddy were there on the before the whole Gaither video thing exploded onto the scene, and my word, how many people have Bill and Gloria been able to bless through that enterprise, you know? But I'm sorry to pull that insertion in, but if you worked with Buddy, I thought you might get a kick out of that. So,
Yeah. Well, when we were doing songs back then, I pretty much just listened to everything, and I never got to sing "Hear My Song, Lord," because that was a trio song. It was
yeah.
it wasn't a vocal band song. It was a trio song. Gloria got to sing it, and one night, Bill had Buddy and I come up and add parts, and he taught us what part he wanted us to sing, and we got to sing on that. And I had sat for so long and listened to that song and wanted to sing it. And that opportunity to get up there and join that song that I loved so much was a heavenly moment.
Oh man.
Bill wouldn't remember it. Gloria wouldn't remember it. But I stood beside Gloria and hearing Gloria's voice singing that song. Gloria is one of those people that has fed these marvelous philosophies into my life all of the years I've known her. She will say things that just make me ponder and things I will never forget. She has always felt as if she was a very weak singer.
Oh, really?
But Gloria was the sound that made the trio warm and rich.
Yes.
And she was that motherly tone, and it created that embrace that the trio had for everybody. That it wrapped you up. And Gloria was the cause of that. She was the instrument for that. And standing beside her, singing her song, I was flabbergasted, and I stayed that way until a few years ago when they stopped doing big arena concerts, and I stopped going with them. I have been completely in awe at the Gaither songs like "These Are They," and being able to hear Gloria sing them and introduce them, and Bill sing them, and it is finished. For goodness sakes. I mean,
oh yeah.
and because he lives, that's our anthem, you know. So I love the Gaither songs. I love the Gaither music, and I've been more than blessed to be able to spend some time with them. I just can't talk about them enough.
That's fantastic. That is so cool.
Songs, I like everyone that's new. I love In the Meantime because I have a lot of people come up and say, I'm going through the meantime.
Yeah.
And I know that was a Holy Spirit inspired song when that happens. And I've also got a song called With His Blood that I just wrote a couple of months ago at one of these retreats. And it was written in just a few minutes, which is so strange. I walked into a room with two other gentlemen and started singing this song, and within an hour we had it done. And it too was about Job. I talked about Job a little bit, and how God took Job on this grand exploratory tour of the universe, and he showed him everything that he'd created, from the largest, farthest thing to the smallest, nearest thing. And then God did something very personal. He said, do you see that mountain goat, Job? Who do you think tells that mountain goat when and where to calve so that that baby doesn't fall down the rocks and perish below? I do that, Job. So what he was saying is, not only did I create it, but I tend it. I take care of it. I watch over it. And in the midst of my suffering, with the loss of my nephew, because I don't have any children. So my 3 nephews became my sons,
Yeah.
and the kids are my grandkids. In the midst of that suffering, I couldn't compartmentalize it. I didn't know where to put it. He was 17 years old. I didn't understand.
Mm.
God showed me that mountain goat
Yeah.
and said, I tend it,
Mm.
and I have you in the palm of my hand.
Yeah.
And I talked about that, and we wrote the song With His Blood. And it talks, the Old Testament tours the Old Testament about the
Yeah.
creation of all things. And then the New Testament, how Jesus became so personal, as close as he could get
Yeah.
to us, and how we're right there in the middle of all of it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So what's happening now in your life? I mean, I know you kind of made, a little bit of a, I mean, your comedy, reared its head in the concert that we were at a couple of weeks ago. But you and Brian moved to a farm in Gravel Switch, Kentucky. Is that right?
We did. And I will tell you this, every evening when I let the dog out, I think to myself, I don't see any lights. I lived in Nashville for 30 years, and that was longer than I'd lived anywhere. And I loved Nashville so much. And being here in the middle of the country is a whole different universe. I'm from here, but it's still a whole different universe. Brian loves it. I miss Nashville. I miss the conveniences. I miss the plays and the friends. And so that's kind of been a challenge for me. But I have concentrated more here on art and songwriting and painting. And I've also concentrated on neighbors. And I love spending time with our good neighbors around here. They have been lifesavers in so many instances. When I would get that crazy tractor stuck in a creek somewhere, my neighbors would come and haul me out with their tractors. And so they've been wonderful neighbors, and I've enjoyed that part. Brian and I are, we're starting an online gallery, and for all of my art, as well as other folks who are creative, we're going to put everything online and display art and sell art from this gallery. It's called God Song Gallery. And I'm looking forward to getting that up and running. We're almost ready to reveal it. I don't want to do one of those things. Something new is coming until the day of the revelation.
Sure.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but that's what we're working on. Comedy kind of, I'm not a comedian. You know what a comedian is. You've lived with one, you raised one, but I'm not a comedian. I just string together funny lines and funny stories, and I use that as a way to hug on an audience.
Yeah.
Before, as I'm singing these wonderful big theological truths, and to get to know them and to allow them to relax. And it's always wonderful when you laugh and have fun together, and then you just share one brief big promise from the Lord, and it seems to hit home a lot better if people are relaxed and they think they know you, and they know a little bit about your life and how crazy it is, and relate. So I use comedy as a tool. I'm not a comedian. I try to.
Jerry Clower said something along the lines. He said, "I don't tell funny stories. I tell stories funny."
Yeah.
And when we moved to Mississippi, we in 1975, that's when we got interviewed as a family to somebody like Jerry Clower, who was larger than life in a lot of ways down there in Mississippi and Yazoo City, and he would talk about these different places, where you Amite County, things like that. And I think the ability to laugh in the middle of life that today seems, fairly challenging in a lot of ways, that we need to bring a little more light and lightness into
Yeah.
situations, and that's kind of a little bit of what I'm trying to do with this thing too. Allison, your life has been a blessing to more people than you'll ever be able to count. Are there particular people, you mentioned the Gaithers and you mentioned Joel and you mentioned some other people, but who are some people that we might not know? Can you think of somebody along the way that brought that sense of, hey, we're going to make it? Who are some folks like that in your life?
I think probably Brian is the main one. Brian is much like his daddy, Brock. He sees things through a very calm spirit.
Yeah.
And he's steady. And when the hard times have come, and COVID was a very hard time, but we've had hard times before. Being a gospel musician, I've never really pushed myself, or we've never really pushed me as an artist. We take what the Lord grants us, and we're very content with that. We're not out for fame and fortune, obviously. So we've had some hard times financially, but Brian has always been the steady spirited one. Very much like his daddy. Things are going to be okay. We're going to get through this. Everybody has to carry a little debt every now and then. And that steady spirit has been the biggest blessing to have in our home, because if he freaked out when I freaked out, Brian just doesn't freak out. He just not. He hurt his finger the other day and he freaked out because he's an accountant. He needed those fingers to type.
Yeah.
And it's really messed up. He went to the doctor today. But, other than that, he's just so ready to be positive. And that has been a great blessing, to be married to somebody that's just ready to be positive at all times and looking for the positive and saying, that's not positive. Let's look on the positive side of things.
That's so
Brian
cool.
has always believed in what I do.
Yeah.
And he's believed in the heart of ministry that I have. And that has been a blessing too. It kept me stable and steady and kept me creating things and creating music and art. And he's a big encouragement. And to be partnered with somebody like that is, I look around and see some of my friends now and their relationships, and I realize how fortunate I am, how blessed I am, how the Lord has guided us. I really can just add the Speer family, Brock and Faye Speer. I can't tell you, if I had a creative thought, Faye was always there with $100 bill saying, go get what you need to do that. Even if it was a stupid thought.
Yeah.
I thought at one time I wanted to hand paint T-shirts, which is such a stupid thought. That's just impossible to do. Faye handed me $100 when she heard what I wanted to do and said, go get what you need. And I did, and I tried it and learned that it was a stupid thought.
But you wouldn't have known that unless you tried it. You would have always wondered.
I wouldn't have known that unless I'd had an encourager.
Good
like
point.
Faye Speer. And when I would fail, she would say, well, just do something else. Figure out something else. You get another idea. You just keep looking for ideas. And that was Brock and Faye. They were not afraid to be innovative, to support people. And I can tell you with all honesty, Brock and Faye Speer were fans of every single gospel singer out there.
That's awesome.
Every single one. And I've never heard a bad word about either of those. And I can't say that about everybody. And I hear stories all the time in a lot of them in Nazarene churches about how Brock and Faye did something special for the church or for the pastor, for the pastor's kids. There are multiple stories of how they reached out, they stepped in, they stood in the gap. I've heard stories from pastors that are older now say the Speer family came with all of their entourage set up, and we had 13 people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we were supposed to give them $1,000 or $1,500, and I handed Brock the check, and Brock would say, "Pastor, I want to just donate this back to the church." What better example in life do you and I have of how to conduct our business?
Yeah. Yeah.
It is a business in a lot of ways, but
Sure.
when I see that a pastor has a bad concert or a bad night, and he's owed me an honorarium, the first thing I think to myself, and Brian does the same thing, what would Brock do? What would Brock do? And many times we have taken the path that Brock would have taken. So we don't, I feel totally confident in my future because of the examples and the teaching that I have seen. And you can probably say this too.
Oh, yeah.
I feel totally confident in the future of my decision making because of the decision makers that I've watched and had live Christ-like lives in front of me. And Michael, that's wealth.
Yes. Yes.
That's what wealth is.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And we can't ask for anything more.
I know a lot of people that have more money than I do, but I don't know of anybody that has been blessed more by the friendship and the example of folks in my life. And I feel like that's exactly, what you're saying there. And that it's a pretty good way to wrap up this episode. I kind of sometimes think I need a full production grid so we can know exactly where the conversation is going to go and how we're going to wrap it up and tie a neat bow on it. And I've tried to make it a little more organic and free form because I'm doing this because I felt led to do it in the first place, to be a blessing to other people. And what happens without fail when I have somebody on, I've done a few solos just because schedule didn't work out and all that, but man, everybody that I've been able to chat with in this medium, it's ended up being such a blessing to me. And you've been a channel for that here today. And if folks want to get in touch with you, and have you come to their church or special event, I didn't ask you this ahead of time. Do you have a website that people go through, or how can they get in touch with you?
Well, they can come to Gravel Switch, Kentucky. There is a can at the end of the road that's 10 miles down. It's a gravel road. You can't get through it without a tractor. Just knock on the can several times and holler. And if we hear the phone, that's our phone. I have a website. It's AllisonSpeer.com. And everything is done through that website. All of my information is on there. A lot of video clips and everything you would need for press is on there, and lots of scheduling things and pictures and everything. So AllisonSpeer.com is where I am.
That's great. I think I've been able to successfully add it down there to the screen.
Yes, you have.
But, hey, Allison, thank you so much for your time this morning, and for making me laugh and making me cry. I mean, that's what a good entertainer is supposed to do. And I think, I think it's also what a good minister's supposed to do too, because after all, life does have its share of joys and sorrows, and God's right there in the middle of all of that. And
In the middle. That's right.
so, hey, we love you and Brian, and are so grateful for your friendship, and are praying for continued blessing on the work that you all will do, and can't wait
Thank
to see this online gallery. Sarah has bought several of your necklaces. She loves those, and
Okay.
they're beautiful, and we're just big fans of both of you, and folks, thanks for being here with us on Michael in the Middle with this gospel music legend in her own right, Allison Speer. Can't wait to see what the future continues how it continues to unfold for us all. Hope you've been blessed by this today as I have. And Allison, thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. I love
Yeah.
you. Keep doing what you're doing. God has called you to do it.
Are you going to get in a car, or are you going to ride the tractor to the dentist? I know you got an appointment here in a little bit.
I'm taking the mule for about 10 miles, and then I'll get on a tractor, ride out another 10 miles, and I have to walk a little bit and then get in the car.
Well, someday Sarah and I are going to get in the car, and we're going to come knock on that can and see if we can.
I hope you do. I hope you do. I love you, Michael. Thank you.
See you.
Okay, bye-bye.
So in addition to the Michael in the Middle podcast, I'd also like to let you know that I'm available for speaking engagements, either to a group, churches, or civic organizations, particularly in the area of generosity. But I'm also very interested in the idea of encouragement. This is a world that bends itself toward beating other people down, beating other people to the punch, beating other people to the prize. And in a world that is so polarized, discouragement and despair seems to be at an all-time high. We hear about mental health issues for folks. We hear about people that just don't know that there's much to live for. I happen to believe in a realistic sort of way, because I know that life is difficult at times, but I believe that an encouraging word, well-spoken and timely fit, makes a huge difference in the lives of others. So I'm available to speak to your team in your organization about the value of being generous with your encouragement of others. And I'd love to share, with your group or organization, particularly along those lines.